Good afternoon. I'm Rachel Silva, and I work for the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program, one of 7 agencies in the Department of Arkansas Heritage. I see a lot of new faces in the crowd today, and I hope you all got one of our Sandwiching in History and Walks Through History tour brochures. Did most people get those? Yeah. Okay, good. No? Okay.
Where were they passing them out?
Everywhere. They must have run out. If you didn't get one, you could find me in a second, and I'll give you my business card, and I can send you one. Okay, you're welcome. But this is not just, a thing at the Castle House. We do a tour of a historic site somewhere different in Central Arkansas once a month, usually on the first Friday at noon, and they're all free all the time. So just show up at that place at noon, and I'll do a tour similar to this, and you get to go through the property and leave, and you're out of there in less than an hour. Okay? But thank you for coming. And welcome to the Sandwiching in History tour of the Dr. Clarence Coke House, better known as the Castle House. I'd like to thank, first of all, Walter Rognrud, and I don't know if he's back here or not, but Walter Rognrud, who owns the property now and allowed us to tour this beautiful house today. Let's give him a round of applause. And I also want to thank a few other people for their help gathering information for the tour, in addition to Mr. Rognrud, also Dr. C.W. Bill Koch Jr., Kevin Blazer, and I don't know if y'all saw all the people helping you park and directing you where to go today, but I want to give a huge thanks to all my colleagues at the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program and the Natural Heritage Commission for their help today. Thank you all. If you're an architect, this tour is worth 1 hour of HSW continuing education credit through the American Institute of Architects, and you may see me after the tour if you're interested in that credit. Completed about 1935, the Castle House, as most people call it, was designed by Little Rock architect Ed Brueggeman for Dr. Clarence W. Coke and his wife Marie. Clarence and Marie Koch didn't live here very long. They sold the house in 1941 as the result of a divorce. The house was occupied by a handful of families between 1941 and 1963 when the property was purchased by John and Eugenie Rognrud, Walter Rognrud's parents. The house has been in the Rognrud family for 53 years. It's now used as a private residence as well as a wedding and event venue. Now I'm going to give you, that was the short summary, now I'm going to give you the rundown on everything, including a short history of this part of town and Stagecoach Road. Present-day Stagecoach Road runs along the route of the Southwest Trail as it traveled through Little Rock. The Southwest Trail was a network of overland routes stretching from the St. Louis area of Missouri to the Red River Valley in northeastern Texas and northwestern Louisiana. First traveled about 1760, the Southwest Trail entered Arkansas in northeastern Randolph County and ran diagonally across the state, skirting the foothills of the Ozark Plateau and the Ouachita Mountains and avoiding the swampy areas of eastern Arkansas, and came out at several crossings of the Red River in southwest Arkansas. The Southwest Trail was later known as the Military Road after the United States Congress appropriated funds for its improvement in the 1820s and 1830s. The Army resurveyed the trail and cleared a better path so that it could be used as a wagon road and a mail route. Stagecoach Road follows the old Military Road from the junction of the Upper Hot Springs Highway, now known as Colonel Glenn, in a southwesterly direction toward the Saline County line, where it becomes Highway 5, and then in Benton it's called the Military Road. Stagecoach Road has at various times been called the Southwest Trail, the Military Road, Fouche Pike, 19th Street Pike, the Hot Springs Highway, and the Benton Highway. According to the abstract of title for the Koch House for this property, the first record of this property dates from March 1834 and shows it as part of a 40-acre tract sold by the United States Land Office to Archibald McHenry. Archibald McHenry, some of you may recognize that name, was one of the earliest white settlers in the area. He owned more than 1,400 acres between his land holdings here as well as across the Arkansas River at Crystal Hill. His property in this area was located primarily southwest of the intersection of present-day Stagecoach Road and David O. Dodd Road. About 1830, McHenry's sons, John and Henry, built the brick Federal-style house that still stands at 6915 Stagecoach Road. The home is more commonly known as the 10-Mile House because it was located about 10 miles from downtown Little Rock, as well as the Stagecoach House because it was rumored to have been a stagecoach stop along the Military Road and possibly boarded travelers. And now I have to do a little short blurb about David O. Dodd, since you all parked at David O. Dodd Elementary or on David O. Dodd Road. After Union forces occupied Little Rock in September of 1863, the 10-Mile House was used as a Union outpost on the southwestern edge of the city. In December of that year, 1863, David O. Dodd was stopped near the 10-Mile House by Union troops. And because his notebook contained a Morse code message that had, information about the strength and position of Union troops, all evidence pointed to the fact that he was a Confederate spy. Dodd was detained overnight in the smokehouse at the 10-Mile House before being transported to Little Rock, where he stood trial and was hanged on January the 8th, 1864. David O. Dodd Elementary School, which opened in an earlier structure on that site in 1924, and David O. Dodd Road, right over here, were so named to commemorate the, quote, boy martyr of the Confederacy. Now about Dr. Coke and this house. Dr. Clarence William Coke was born on October 29, 1896 at Johannesburg, Washington County, Illinois, to Frederick and Emily Koch. Although Dr. Koch's parents were born in Illinois and Missouri respectively, they were the children of German immigrants. In his hometown of Oakville, Illinois, located about 40 miles southeast of St. Louis, had a high concentration of German immigrants who came to the area beginning in the early to mid-19th century to farm the rolling prairie. In fact, according to Dr. Koch's son, Bill, everyone in his dad's family spoke exclusively in German until Dr. Koch was about 10 or 11 years old. Dr. Koch served in World War I. Interestingly, he never served in the United States Army. Rather, he volunteered to fight for the British forces before the United States entered the war. In 1921, Koch graduated with high honors from Washington University Dental School in St. Louis. He moved to Little Rock in 1923 and opened a dental practice specializing in orthodontics in 1923. For many years, his practice was located in the Donaghy building at 7th and Main Street. Dr. Coke and his wife, Marie, whom he met in St. Louis, initially lived in a house at 505 F Avenue in Park Hill in North Little Rock. According to the 1930 census, their house in Park Hill was valued at $6,000, which at that time was the cost of a pretty nice home. In 1931, Clarence and Marie Koch traveled to Europe, where they admired castles up and down the Danube River. In 1933, the Kochs purchased this property on the Hot Springs Highway. They hired architect Ed Brueggeman to design a house and a stable here that resembled the castles that they had seen in Europe. And it's likely that Dr. Coke became acquainted with the architect, with Mr. Brueggeman, while the two of them lived in St. Louis. Edward Frederick Brueggeman was born in 1905 at St. Louis, but spent his formative years in Asheville, North Carolina, where he graduated from high school. And during high school, Brueggeman studied under Asheville architect D.J. Dreyer during the afternoons. And it's important to note here that since he was interested in architecture, Brueggeman was probably very familiar with the chateau-esque style Biltmore House, also located in Asheville and built during the late 19th century. Brueggeman attended Washington University in St. Louis and worked for the architectural firm of LeBone and Klein in that city until 1928, when he moved to Little Rock to work for the firm of Thompson, Sanders, and Ginocchio. He opened his own practice in 1932 and soon partnered with Guy Swaim Jr. and Bill Allen in the firm of Brueggeman, Swaim, and Allen. So back to the Koch family. According to Little Rock City Directories and the property's abstract, Clarence and Marie Koch, I'll let that get a little farther away. Clarence and Marie Koch were living in their dream home by 1935. And keep in mind, it was just the two of them at that time. They did not have any children together. Up until that time, they lived in Park Hill. Dr. Koch mortgaged the house for $10,000 in May 1935, and that's equal to almost $175,000 in 2016. Two things. It has been said, well, a lot of things have been said about this house that aren't true, but it has been said that Dr. Koch began work on the house and stable in 1928, but I've not been able to document that anywhere. He did not buy this property until 1933, so that's one thing. Number two, it's been said that the guest house, the farthest building away from us, it's been said that that was constructed first to allow them to have a place, the Kochs to have a place to live, while the rest of this was completed. I don't think that's true either. It's likely that the people who were working on the construction of the house probably stayed in the stable and in tents out here on the property because it was so far out of town. But I don't think that the guest house was built until the late 1950s. And I'll tell you why in a minute. What I do know with certainty is this: the house and the stable were under construction between 1933 and 35. They were built with native stone and oak trees harvested here on the property. No stone was brought from Europe to build this house and stable, no matter what you've heard. At least some of the millwork in the house and stable was done by the Monarch Mill and Lumber Company at 2507 West 7th Street in Little Rock. And the house still has its original steel casement windows and French doors. About 1939, Clarence and Marie Koch divorced. Dr. Koch remarried soon thereafter to Mary Allie Koch, with whom he had two children, Dr. C.W. Bill Koch Jr. and Mary Koch Urey. Clarence and Mary Allie Koch initially lived in a house at 1520 Broadway, but they raised their children in the house 1727 Center Street, right next door to the front gate of the Arkansas Governor's Mansion. Dr. Koch was one of the first orthodontists in Arkansas. He worked diligently to increase professionalism in the field of dentistry and published several articles in trade journals in the 1930s and 1940s. He was active in several professional associations, including the American Dental Association, the Arkansas State Dental Association, American College of Dentists, American Association of Orthodontists, and the Southwestern Society of Orthodontists. He served as secretary of the Arkansas State Board of Dental Examiners and as a member of the staff at St. Vincent Infirmary's Department of Dental Surgery. Koch was also a Mason, a Shriner, a Rotarian, and a president of the Little Rock Chamber of Commerce. Dr. Koch died on November 2nd, 1979, at the age of 83. Koch's obituary contained a quote from his esteemed colleague, Dr. William R. Allstat, who called Koch the, quote, father of modern orthodontics in Arkansas. He went on to say, quote, he was a great teacher and a wonderful friend. Although he retired from his orthodontic practice in 1962, he never lost his interest in the welfare of the public nor dentistry, particularly orthodontics. He consistently maintained high ethical standards, and I honestly believe all who were fortunate enough to have known him knew him fondly. He had a keen sense of humor, and many of us will miss him tremendously. Now about the later occupants of the house. From 1941 to 1946, the Castle House belonged to Wilton Robert Witt Stevens and his first wife, Joy. Of course, you all recognize that name. In 1933, Witt Stevens founded the W.R. Stevens Investment Company, now Stevens, Inc. In 1946, the house was purchased by Gus B. Walton and his wife, Caroline. At that time, Walton was president of a Little Rock investment securities firm called Walton and Company. He later developed Walton Heights on a hill overlooking the Arkansas River at the northwest corner of Highway 10 and Interstate 430. The Waltons remained here in this house until 1954, when they sold to Eugene Raines Jr. and his wife, Mary Hudson Raines. Eugene and Mary Raines divorced about a year after they bought the house, and the property remained in the family of Mary Hudson Raines and her father, Wilbur L. Bill Hudson, until 1958. In June '58, Bill Hudson sold the property to Homer and Macy Whitcomb. At that time, and this is why I have my theory about the guest house, at that time, the buyer and seller entered into an agreement in which this property would remain residential in nature only, and it granted permission for the construction of a single-family home and a standalone garage. This information, along with historic aerial photos of the property, none of which show the guest house early on, led me to the conclusion that the guest house and the ruin out there behind it, that was probably the ruin of the garage. I don't know what happened to it, but those things I think were built in the late 50s. Finally, in May 1963, the Whitcombs sold the property to John and Eugenie Rognrud, and it's been in their family ever since. John and Eugenie Rognrud had 5 children. Some of you may have known the Rognrud kids: Rachel, Walter, Rebecca, Peter, and Risa. John Rognrud had an aluminum siding business called Arkansas, Louisiana Home Modernizers, Inc. He later opened a surplus and salvage yard and quickly discovered that he could make money in the building salvage material business. In 1970, his business name became Ronco Surplus and Salvage. He had 2 stores, one at the Saline County line at Alexander and one in North Little Rock at 3908 East Broadway. Rognrud was a founding member of the Pleasant Valley Country Club, and he even had a 3-hole golf course out here in the backyard at one time. In the 1980s, the Rognruds hosted polo matches out here on the golf course, as well as outdoor operas. John died in 2004, and his widow, Eugenie, still lives here in the house. In 2011, John and Eugenie Rognrud's son, Walter, started a wedding and event venue business. His business partner is Kevin Blazer, who owns Little Rock Carriage, and they currently book weddings, parties, and all types of events out here at the Castle on Stagecoach. And they've started offering fairly recently Sunday brunch, usually on the third Sunday of each month. Brunch starts at about $65 a person. It includes a carriage ride from your vehicle. They have you park out here at the Dodd Elementary School. They bring you up to the property in a carriage, horse and carriage. You get champagne, mimosas, buffet-style brunch, music, and more. And I told them I would announce their upcoming events on Father's Day weekend. There will be a Father's Day dinner on Saturday, June 18th, and Father's Day brunch on Sunday, June 19th. Reservations are required, and you may find more information and menus on their Facebook page. Now, some quick details and instructions, and I'll let you go inside. The house is about 9,000 square feet. It's got 3 finished floors plus an attic. On the basement level, the basement originally just housed the boiler, mechanical systems, and storage. It was later finished out. It was rumored that whenever Dr. Coke lived here that he had a whiskey still in the basement. I do not know if that was true. But the basement was later finished out regardless, and it's hosted parties and dances over the years. On the main floor, which is this floor here, you see Mark Miller, he's on the main floor. The main floor has the sunroom, starting over here on the west side, the sunroom, which was originally a screened porch, the living room with fireplace and exposed wood beams in the ceiling. And be sure to look up whenever you go into the turret area, because there's beautiful exposed beams in there too. The dining room with rich wood paneling. The kitchen, which has been updated multiple times over the years, the last time in 2006. There's 2 rooms above the garage over here that were built to be maids' quarters. The second, it's private area for the family now, that it has 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and that's where you can get to the attic room, to the walk-in attic to the turret room, which is a round room up there with a wood floor, and it's a library. It has bookcases all the way around in that turret room. They currently own about 100 acres out here. And let's see, also something to look at whenever you go inside, the exposed beams in the living area are hand stenciled, hand painted, and that's original to the home. John Rognrud installed the swimming pool in the early 70s. That was not here originally. There was a remodel done in the mid-80s in which the Rognruds redid a lot of stuff in the basement, and they replaced the asbestos flooring and carpet with the flagstone that you'll see in there now. The basement walls were changed from unfinished concrete to more of a rock face concrete. You kind of feel like you're in a cave whenever you're down there. And then the screened porch was glassed in over here on the west end of the house. And finally, they hired a stonemason from Leslie, Arkansas, to do this staircase on this side on the west end of the back porch. It originally didn't have a staircase on that side. It was just the balustrade continued all the way around. So they added that staircase so you could get off the porch on either end. Now, a couple announcements, and then I'll take any questions, and then we'll start to go through. First, our next tour is Friday, July 1st at All Souls Church in Scott. I told you already, the second floor is off limits, and so is this area right above the garage. It's got a private sign on the door. If the door's closed, don't open it. You may go everywhere else, though. The entire basement is finished out, and you may go there. You may go everywhere else on the main floor of the house. You may go into the stable. You may go into the guest house, and anywhere else on the grounds that you would like to go. There's an exit door in the basement. This is important. There's an exit door that comes out of the basement right there in the porte cochere underneath the archway. So once you get down into the basement, or you can go in that way, don't try to come up the spiral staircase. People are going to be coming down, and it's too narrow. So once you're down there, go out the door outside. And please, please be careful on the staircase. The steps are carpeted, and they're kind of wonky at the edge. You'll slip. It's easy to slip. Now, does anybody have any questions?
What are the shingles made of?
What? I couldn't hear you.
Shingles.
Slate. Anybody else?
I understand that the house was built from Marie's money. Is that correct?
I've heard that. He said he thought that the house was built with Marie's money, his first wife's money. I've heard that, but I haven't been able to substantiate that.
Was it built in the Depression?
Yes. I can't hear you.
Was it Blazer, B-L-A-Z-E-R?
Yes. His business partner is Kevin Blazer, B-L-A-Z-E-R.
Do you have a cost of construction at that
Did you ever hit a hole-in-one on his golf course?
No. She asked about the cost of construction at that time. He mortgaged it for $10 grand, but in the 1940 census it was valued at $100,000, which is a lot for 1940. Purple. I can't hear you. You guys aren't quiet. I can't hear the questions.
About the guest house. I was friends with the Hudsons in the 50s, and I spent weekends over here a lot. The guest house was here.
In the 50s?
Early 50s.
Early 50s? Okay. She's saying the guest house was here in the early 50s. Right. Okay. Well, I don't think it was built before the main house, though. Okay. Why don't some of you, just a second, why don't some of you be real sports and go over and do the stable and the guest house first so that not everybody is inside the main house at the same time? We'll keep it open for you.
The guest house is open too, Rachel?
Yes.